Hello, and welcome to my excruciatingly detailed Gordon Freeman cosplay tutorial. In this part, we will be going over making the breastplate. I started off as usual with Bro Navarro's pattern, and boy did I need this one more than any other piece. After trying it on my husband, I ended up having to lengthen the collar area and bring in the armholes for comfort. There was also this back panel piece, but we'll get to this monstrosity later. For better structure, I made use of some 10mm EVA foam. Since the back panel was more or less one solid piece, I ended up making this pseudo-vest shape as my base to build off of. For the front Lambda logo, I printed out a PNG of the logo and then transferred it onto some 2mm EVA foam, before gluing it to a beveled piece of 10mm EVA foam. I then cut out the pieces for the bottom half of the front panel. To create the angled edges, I made some V-cuts on the back of my foam and then hit them with my heat gun before pinching the corners together. I absolutely love this trick. To create a smooth interior for the front panel, I glued some 3mm foam to the back of the bottom piece and some 10mm foam to the back of the top piece. And now for the dreaded back panel. I began with making the frame, stacking pieces of 10mm foam to allow for the frame to both jut in and out from the base. It took some trial and error, but I'm pretty happy with the level of depth I ended up with. Unfortunately, this reactor thing didn't have a pattern, so I ended up having to come up with one on my own. I ended up tracing a bunch of circular objects from around my home until I got the general top-down shape that I wanted. From here, I had a better idea of the width I needed for each of the outer and inner dome pieces, with the outer dome being made out of 1/2-inch thick floor mats and the inner dome being made out of 6mm EVA foam. I then worked on the detailing, making these raised pieces for the reactor out of 10mm foam, as well as these triangle pieces out of 6mm foam. I also made use of some 20mm EVA foam half dowels to make the top pipe piece. All that was left was to carve out a half circle for the reactor and glue a piece of 3mm foam to the back. I also made these prongs out of this EVA foam square dowel. The final touch was adding on Gordon's rib pieces made out of 2mm foam. I then attempted to attach my front panel to my base with magnets, only to have them be way too weak. I quickly pivoted instead to using Velcro on the sides of the base. In hindsight, I should have done a smidge more research on breastplate attachments, but you live and learn. My final step, as always, was filling in my gaps and seams with foam clay and sanding it all down with 220 grit sandpaper. And that's it! This is by far the most complicated piece I've made to date, and I'm super proud of myself for pushing through it. With the final armor piece completed, it's time to move on to painting. Tune in next time for some highs and lows in my painting process. Thanks!